Yeah. Subscribe to the channel. Arthur Rubin stood in the middle of the street and inhaled pure spring air. Behind him, with a dull clatter, the gates of the colony had just closed. The guy took another deep breath and threw a small gray sports bag on his shoulder. Freedom, Arthur shouted out loud to himself, smiling at how otherwise this simple word sounded here, outside the prison cell. Arthur walked towards the bus stop, enjoying every step in his old, completely worn-out sneakers. He was in them on the court and on the day when the event took place, which completely changed his life. Arthur was not a killer or a reprimanded thief, but there was a difficult fate behind his shoulders and only one wrong step, because of which everything flew into the abyss. Artur Rubin was about years old. He was born into a very ordinary working family. Angelina Nikolaevna's mother worked as a salesperson in a grocery store. The boy had no father, and he knew nothing about him, since his mother did not want to talk about this topic. Instead, Artur had a father, Stas, a man of complex, even heavy character, not to the extent of being addicted to alcohol. Mother tried to reason with her impulsive husband, but only for nothing. For a week he held on and even returned to the factory, where he managed to work out a couple of shifts, and then everything started from the beginning. Little Arthur often received from the drunk father, but he endured. He was weak, and what is there to hide? He was afraid. Angelina Nikolaevna tried to keep her son from falling into the abyss, but this rarely happened. Usually, Stas, on impetuous feet, began with a collapse, and without that, with a piece of furniture. He turned the chairs and tables, especially threw the cooking soup, hit the mug, and threw the toys of Arthur into the window. After that, he seemed to own the abyss. He didn't have enough broken furniture, and he started pushing and kicking his mother. Of course, the boy stood up for his mother, although he was thin and very small, and he just stood and watched or hid from everything in the room. He couldn't do it, and he got it accordingly. The police took the Rubin family, as it happens in such cases, into account. They made a couple of notes on their part, threatened them for days, and okay. So, the help of the mother always answered that Arthur had a bad time in the yard, or had a bad time with Tarzan. She was a good woman, but her husband was afraid of alcoholics. Arthur just agreed silently, did not want to give his mother away. Once, a drinking incident happened in their family. Arthur picked up a kitten in the yard, a little one, a good one, and called him a gun. He tried to throw the kitten out of the window. How did he behave with the boy's toys before that? Arthur could not allow this, and for the first time in his 6 years, he went to the open room with fists. Stas Apasenko did not expect this. The boy threw himself at him like a child of a predator, kicking him with his hands and legs. Although the adult man was 100 times stronger, he appreciated the rage of the boy, and therefore the kitten spared him. However, in the evening, when her mother returned from work, she was badly injured. The poor woman had never heard of the cat incident, and did not understand why her husband beat her up again. But the next morning, having woken up, Stas advised Angelina Nikolaevna to give her son a boxing section. You're taking care of him. You're taking care of him. You probably want a woman to grow out of him. And in the meantime, there is potential in the boy. Aggression, pure such. That's what the powerful fist struck his wife in front of him. What are you talking about? The wife asked carefully. If he's doing something again, don't touch him. He's still a child. I'm not talking about that. Stas waved off his wife. We need to bring Artur to the gym. Give him to the section, you know? He's a bull, but it hurts. We need to get his energy into the business. Angelina Nikolaevna set her lips on fire. She just didn't know how to react to such a proposal from her husband. And then, after all, money is needed for the section. Well, sport is certainly good, she agreed. But what section are you offering to give it to? If figure skating, then we can't pull it. I say right away, some crazy money is worth it. The face of the father slightly stretched out from the dissatisfaction. What a horse! Angel. Stas gently tapped his own head with his fist, hinting at the stupidity of his wife. I'm talking to you about wrestling, about boxing. You need to educate a man, not a Malakal dancer. Angelina Nikolaevna was surprised. What would this husband give a boy to fight? He, on the contrary, rejoices every time when Arthur cannot give a relinquish, because he is weak. Although she had long noticed that Stas was sober and Stas was under the same level as two different people. Well, okay, let's give this Marturka to the boxing guy, and who will pay? Tea is not cheap, it's all pleasure. As usual, mother, we'll take the money from the family. Stas simply answered and pulled out another bottle of unscrupulous vodka from the kitchen table. From the family. Angelina sighed hard. So, pay me back. Arthur, who was hiding all this time behind a corner and heard every word of the adults, only pressed his kitten's chest harder. Box? He couldn't believe that he was wanted to be given here, because it was great and at the same time scary. What if he can't stand it? What if he's not strong enough like other boys? His set was always not very good. This is what the mother admitted. However, the realization that he would finally learn to fight professionally warmed the boy's soul. The next day, Mom had a day off, and she took Arthur to a sports school located a few blocks from their house. A small brick building was built a long time ago, and yet, as it seemed to the boy, he could withstand anything. The sports section was located on the basement floor. I think it was in the basement. Seeing how other boys were fighting and sparring, Arthur was amazed with delight. Being small, he did not understand the techniques of their execution, but the smooth movements of the fighters amazed him, and sharp and clear blows made his tiny heart squeeze sweetly. He squeezed his mother's hand tightly. To which the head coach of the club, Vladislav Ivanovich Karpov, paid attention. You brought a new fighter? Why did you cling to your son so much? As if he would be carried away by the wind. The coach laughed. Vladislav Ivanovich, a strong, harsh uncle, scared his mother a little, but only at first. Later, she was even glad that she would be engaged with her son, such a person as Karpov. Arthur really needed a normal male role model for imitation, a man better than a coach. She could not find in this regard for Arthur. So, your son brought you here? She was not sure. She started. The husband said that the boy should start communicating to the sport as soon as possible. The coach critically looked down on the skinny Arthur, then turned his gaze to Angelina Nikolaevna. Why didn't you bring the dough yourself? It would be more convenient to discuss everything. He works at the shift factory, reddened as if a beaver was lying to his mother Artur. And what is there to discuss? The guy wants to fight to defend his homeland. Homeland? Vladislav Ivanovich looked at Artur, and then asked the boy himself. Can you at least get off? 10 times for starters. Of course I can. The boy was happy to shout. Show me. The coach offered a serious look. The guy immediately let go of his mother's hand and rushed to the mat, intending to show him everything he was capable of. At this time, Karpov took the mother of the boy aside and quietly asked, Are you sure you want your son to be a boxer? Don't get me wrong, I'll take him, but it hurts. He's a coward. Angelina Nikolaevna has just died. Listen, I understand that my boy is maybe an unborn boxer, but you couldn't train with him, at least try. It will be better for him if you can train him, and it will be useful in adult life. And what about the boy's father? Does he want to train with him, or does he have no time? Asked the coach. Husband, we have a difficult situation at home now. Tried to explain Angelina. Vladislav Ivanovich looked at Mother Artura for a few seconds before his eyes became clear. Okay, let's see what can be done with your boy. You look at him, and it will be some kind of good. All this time, Coach Karpov, unnoticed by his mother, was watching her son. The boy, who started to get up, was already out of breath on the 6th exercise, and now he was sitting spitting sweat. And shake off the tension in your thin muscles. Not bad. He decided to cheer up the guy a little. Only you need to work out more and eat better. Then you will quickly gain muscle mass. Without this, there is nowhere to fight. The guy puked weakly and smiled in response. His heart beat fast under the bunny. His cheeks burned from the unusual sportsman. Come tomorrow at 9. Let's start then, the coach promised. The mother looked at the tall, muscular man with gratitude, but immediately took a look. Now her boy will not be alone. The woman had time to think before Arthur happily ran up to her, grabbing her with his thin hands. A year later, Arthur's mother died. At the shop, the neighbors then talked that the woman's heart could not stand the fact that she had learned about the betrayal of her husband. What about the father? He only ignored all these. Thank you, my heartbreaking mother's friend. They somehow got bored and managed to put the child in school. In the first grade, the boy walked with 3 gladioluses and in an old, washed-up uniform, which was taken from the shoulders of someone's long-lost son. However, Arthur did not complain. He understood very well that he was now left with his father one by one, and was immensely grateful to his mother for the fact that she brought him to the section. Arthur had been training with Coach Karpov for a year, and since the beginning of the training he has certainly become stronger. He was no longer so weak and could quite hold the blow. And in relation to Sochi, his new physical form was useful. Stas did not give Arthur a shelter, but he still regretted the guy. However, he did not stop drinking. Still, when something annoyed him, the father tried to put his anger and discontent on the boy. However, now Arthur became more confident in his own strength and could almost really stand up for himself because of his cat, Pushka. Once again, the father, being drunk, again attacked the cat. He tried to kick the poor animal more painfully, thus stabbing Arthur. The thing was that the boy forgot to put the alarm clock on for a certain time, and after another drink he was late for work. "Wow, you're a bad omen," the drunk man waved in a rage. "You crawl here, ask to eat everything, and you eat my money." "He eats the money we get from the aid," he answered instead of Artur, who managed to run straight into the kitchen from the corridor. He had just returned from training. "You, Uncle Stas, didn't bring any money this month. You just drink everything." The guy grabbed the cat from the underpants of the godfather and threw it into the corridor, slamming the door. The animal was safe and meowed thankfully. "What are you blabbering about, puppy?" The drunkard got drunk and waved at the little boy with his square fist. However, Arthur was ready. With a sharp movement, without paying attention to the threatening hand of the father, the boy threw his own fist and struck Stas with a clearly proven blow to the jaw. "This is for you, for your mother, and for the gun," the boy said to Gruma. "I see it will get even worse, and you will not touch me anymore." With all his hatred for Stas, Arthur tried to preserve the remnants of politeness. The mother was not brought up in vain. However, humiliating and raising a hand on yourself or your lover, he will not allow anything like this in this house anymore. "Here I will grow up, take the gun, and finally leave you," said the boy to him. "And you live here as you want. That's what I squeezed out by rubbing my broken jaw. You little scoundrel, you should have been sent to the orphanage right away. They would have taught you the mind of the mind there. Damn it. Your mother pulled me in to tell you to sign up for boxing." Arthur just smiled. "You think, since I'm small, I don't understand anything? You think I don't know that you didn't leave me for the great parental love? You were paid for me as a host. If you had given me to the shelter, then now you would have nothing to drink. That's all." With these words, the boy left the kitchen and, grabbing his cat's hands, closed himself in his room. Time passed. The perfect summer of Arthur came unnoticed. The boy turned, and he was preparing for graduation. By this moment, young Reuben turned into a young, who gave great hopes to the young boxers of the league. Arthur became a strong, broad-minded, confident guy and continued to train, winning all new awards in the collection of his sports school and coach. Over the past years, Vladislav Ivanovich became closer to Arthur than his father. The young man shared with Karpov not only his sports achievements, but also often consulted with him in life issues. The guy trusted his teacher wholeheartedly and did not hide from him what he was worried about his own future. In recent years, living under the same roof with Sakim was simply unbearable. Karpov, being aware of the life circumstances of the guy, unexpectedly offered him to live with himself, which Arthur was pleasantly delighted with. How much can this hard-working drunk endure? I started talking to Vladislav Ivanovich. "Get your things and move to my place. I have a big 3-room apartment. I think I have enough space for everyone." "Are you serious?" With hope in his eyes, Artur asked again. "Oh God, it would be so great. Vladislav Ivanovich, I have no words. Thank you. I promise I won't embarrass you. Honestly, I just have a cat left there. A cat ear. I can't leave my friend to this bastard. He'll throw him out of the window right away. I'll take a nap." The coach thoughtfully rubbed his chin and then smiled. "And you know what? Bring your cat. I only have flowers from the food, but if you promise that he won't eat them, then I think we'll get along with him." That same evening, Arthur threw his clumsy belongings, clothes, and everything else into the bag. The guy had already bought money for his own, earned in competitions, and, having taken the cat's armpit, he went to live with the coaches. The boy's disappearance was not even noticed by his father, as always lying in an unconscious state. Arthur decided that later he would call him and explain everything. Moreover, the boy did not want to have any conflicts with him now. He was too tired of these exhausting hysterics and uncontrollable attacks of Stas's anger. So they lived together, Arthur, Vladislav Ivanovich, and Pushik. As Arthur later recalled, sitting in a tight prison cell, these were the best 2 years of his life. The guy remembered how in one of the most difficult fights for him, Coach Karpov still believed in him and cheered him on. Left, come on, don't blink the percut. Vladislav Ivanovich Arturo was screaming, standing on the other side of the rope ring, remembering the basics I taught you for so many years. The fragile one always beats harder. Why? Because he is more angry. Arturo got a great one then. The opponent was strong. And although they both performed in the semi-heavyweight, the complexion of that guy was such as if he was a newborn heavyweight. Having received several crushing blows to the body and head, Arthur was already ready to give up when the coach came to help with his impudence. That fight Arthur Rubin won, becoming the youngest champion of his region in the middleweight. Unfortunately, this was the last time he professionally fought under the guidance of Vladislav Ivanovich. And in general, the last time he saw his coach alive. The trouble came from nowhere. One evening, when the coach returned home from the club, his dear foreign brand beat him down on the full run, behind the wheel of which was sitting some rich scoundrel. The worst thing is that the culprit was never found then. They must have bought off, so Arthur thought. The day when he identified Vladislav Ivanovich's lifeless body in the morgue became the darkest part of his life. On the same day as his mother's death, the coaches of the entire sports school were buried. Karpov not only brought up dozens of champions in her for all the years of his life, but he was also a really good person, a real friend, a mentor for the guys who decided to devote their lives to sports. After the memorial, Arthur wanted to pack his things and leave immediately, when he unexpectedly found a letter with a note in his mailbox. For the guy with a bright spot in khaki color, the army was blinded. So it turned out that at the age of, Arthur went through several real family tragedies and eventually ended up in an army barracks. Days went by in an endless sequence, in which endless patrols, service, and military theory each day exchanged each other in the same hour. On the one hand, Arthur liked the clear army discipline. To some extent, it helped him to get rid of the black thoughts about the past, so that in the end Arthur would dry up with his young soul, if on one beautiful day he did not meet Daria on his way. She was a student at the school, who studied to be an economist in the same city where Arthur lived. Young people got acquainted quite commonly. The girl hurried to the bus, but was late, and Arthur was just passing by on a service truck. He was sent to the city for a provision bought for army cuisine. "Girl, can I give you a lift?" Smiling, the student asked the young soldier. "I would like to take the bus, of course, but since it happened so—" Dasha answered uncertainly, and Arthur hurried to calm her down. "Don't be afraid. I'm not far from here. The combatant sent me to the city to get the food. I won't do anything to you, Lieutenant." The student thought for a few seconds about the offer of the guy, until Krasnoryacheva looked at his own watch. He said, "The time is ticking, decide, dear." Well, in the end, Daria agreed. But it was too much to stop and fasten the seatbelt. The girl demanded it very much. "We still had enough to make up for the accident." "I'm listening, Comrade Commander." Artur politely put his hand on the visor and then laughed. Dasha also laughed at her own show-off. Later, when they were already leaving, she asked the guy for forgiveness for her tone. "You were sorry that I was so harsh." This is, to some extent, a pro-deformation and even a native one. My parents teach philosophy at the university, and my dad is a famous historian. Starikov. Maybe you heard about this? Maybe I heard. Artur, smiling mysteriously, responded. He really liked the girl, so he didn't want to lie. "Well, here we are," Dasha called out with sadness. When the soldier was taken to his house. "Thank you for taking me. I would stand like this at the bus stop waiting for the next bus." At this moment, Arthur realized that it was time to take a decisive step now or never. Sorry, Dese. They had already met while talking about the road. And how do you look at the local cinema to visit next weekend? I heard there will be a loud premiere on the days. We could watch and discuss together after the coffee with ice cream. Dasha did everything she could think of, although in fact she was pleased with the offer made to the young military, perhaps to the future colonel. She was one of those girls who liked when they were appreciated for their dignity. If not a horror movie, then you can watch it. The student replied in a slant. I don't like when everything explodes on the screen, or vice versa. There are only bloody rivers everywhere. Dasha crumpled her little nose. No, there is something historical there. Arthur called out with a light heart. I promise, if there are explosions, then in an extremely moderate amount. As a result, the next weekend, the young people spent together. Arthur managed to take a leave for 2 days. The guy and the girl quickly found common language. Arthur liked the intelligence and elegance of the fragile Dasha, and the other one, on the contrary, very much sympathized with the somewhat primitive, ancient, as she herself called it, the power of Arthur. For her, he was such a ruthless defender, a knight ready to fulfill any desire of a beautiful lady, whatever this desire was. The more Arthur realized that he was out of his mind about his Daria. The couple constantly wrote to each other, exchanging photos. Both like such a novel in the letters a little reminiscent of the style of relations from old Soviet films. Dasha constantly wrote to the guy about how she loves him and waits for him, and how slowly time goes by when they can't be together. Sometimes he managed to see her. Usually this happened to the rare fire guys, and then the couple did not part for a moment. Arthur and Dasha became such a single whole, even though their romance developed mostly in the distance, that the girl even left the institute for important classes, all in order to support the beloved at the ceremony of the oath. He would still say words of protection of the motherland in beautiful form, and Dasha, so small and thin, looked at him with delighted eyes from the first row, along with the brides of other guys. In the evenings, before going to bed, the coworkers asked Arthur to read them something from those letters that Dasha had sent him, although the contents of their correspondence were sometimes very intimate. Arthur still chose places where a girl with special beauty and elegance described his feelings to the guy. At some point, Arthur and Dasha realized that they wanted to be together officially, and therefore young people decided that as soon as the guy finished his service, they would immediately get married. Despite the fact that both were young, and Arthur had not even met Daria's parents yet. It seemed to the couple that all the life difficulties and questions must be clarified. It is only worth it for them to be next to each other forever. Arthur had a heavy pack of letters from Dasha under his mattress, which he periodically read in the short soldier's evenings, when before the cherished farewell, another successfully completed day of service remained with him. There was little personal time. Half a year before Arthur's dismissal, everything changed dramatically. Dasha suddenly stopped sending letters. At first, the guy thought that something had happened in the mail, some kind of failure, because of which the cherished envelopes could not reach him. However, other guys continued to receive messages from their friends and relatives. So, it was clearly not about the post office. Arthur began to worry. Did something terrible happen to his beloved? Or maybe it was her family. Something happened to Dasha's father. Moreover, recently the girl complained to her fiancé that he was more and more likely to have heart problems. The guy asked for permission from the commander of the unit and began to regularly call the girl, first at home and then on the cell phone. For some reason, no one came to the house. But when Arthur called the mobile phone, he heard the voice of the electric car answerer in the phone, telling him that the number was wrong. Having checked with a sheet of notebook where he had recorded Dashin's phone, the guy was sure that there could be no mistake. The number was indeed correct. With a bad feeling, Arthur slowly hung up the phone. He folded a piece of paper with his number with trembling hands. The guy was confused. He didn't know what to do now. As a result, his friends advised him to wait for Dembele and then go to Dasha and find out everything in place. Maybe something really happened to them. Don't worry, Arthur. They could have moved the whole family to another district. Well, yes, and I have nothing to say. The young soldier smiled bitterly. No, it doesn't look like Dasha. And her parents are intelligent. If something had happened to her, they would have let us know. The friends just waved their hands. They couldn't tell their friend their last and most obvious guess. Arthur could just get tired of Dasha, and she left him. The day when the service finally came to an end, the burnt iron forever remained burnt by Arthur on the subsoil. The sky was covered with lead-gray clouds, from which soon flowed cold blue leaven. Arthur did not have an umbrella, and therefore the guy had to cover himself with his own jacket so as not to get wet in the end. Having been outside the palace, he immediately rushed towards Dasha's house. Trying to sing for the width of the military step, Arthur's heart also seemed to be running wild. On noticing a huge puddle, the guy was faster and faster crossing familiar streets and a large park with high gloomy vines, where young people loved to walk during their rare meetings. Finally, Reuben found himself near a tall, beautiful house in which his bride lived. The house was built recently. Therefore, the yard around it and the inner space of the new spacious entrance amazed the guy with its brightness and purity. How surprising it is, but Arthur has never been to her house for all the time of relationship with Daria. What's there? He didn't even come into the entrance. The girl explained this by the fact that she has very strict and conservative parents. They could easily put her under house arrest. Of course, if Dasha does not provide convincing evidence that her choice made her go home with the most serious intentions. Arthur then joked, saying that they still have to meet after the end of their service. Dasha replied that it was better to wait a little longer. She allegedly wanted to prepare her parents. "Who do you want?" the old lady asked the guy, sitting at the large reception table at Cannes. The lush woman looked at Arthur through the thick lenses of her glasses. "Dasha Starakova still lives in the TH apartment. Won't you tell me?" She remembered the address of the young man, where she sent her favorite letters of response. "Starakova, who are you to them?" she asked him unreliably. "My name is Arthur Rubin. I'm Dasha's fiancé," calmly answered Arthur, and the heart itself, white, will now exactly jump out of the chest. From the minute the face of the concierge kept still the same distrustful expression, and then it began to rush to a smile. A second, and from her thickly painted lips came a loud, not hiding from the blood-reddened contempt of laughter. "Honey, you..." The woman barely managed to swallow her cough. "What's funny?" Arthur patted the boy. "No, you're sick. Nothing, absolutely nothing." Wiping away the tears smeared in half with ink, the concierge giggled. "You just got out too late. Dasha, you'd better read it as the 3rd month of marriage. And not the old man. She's older, but They refused to listen, but he still could say, "Dasha, we are married." He did not remember how he flew up the stairs to the 6th floor, nor how he screamed something offensive after the concierge. The guy quickly realized that Dasha's apartment should be about on the 6th and 7th floors, and he was not mistaken. Having jumped into the spacious hall of the staircase, Arthur saw with his own eyes. As Dasha herself leaves the door of her apartment, and together with her, the one who could apparently be considered the girl's husband. Inside, the guy's lifeline was torn off. All the thoughts that held him on the surface all this time and gave him some remnants of calm and rationality were completely demolished by a bitter, salty wave of rage. Arthur's feelings were flooded with a dark, deep wave, not giving him a chance to dive to the surface. Dasha whispered, How could you do this to me? To us?" Daria, as thin and beautiful as she was on the day of the first meeting, looked at her ex-husband with huge, frightened eyes. A tall, thin guy was rising next to her. The appearance of a little older girl. Expensive sun-protected glasses and several golden rings on sharp fingers, and also a fashionable Spanish girl, were given out in Dasha's husband by a greedy nightclub lover and a fashionable party member. Judging by his Olipavate outfit, there was another major in front of Arthur, a son of rich parents who did not earn anything in this life, but received everything for free. This guy looked at Arthur and Dasha with confusion. "Dasha?" He asked question, looking at his wife. "Who is this? And what is he up to?" Dasha, scared, grabbed the fat guy by the hand. "Nothing, Vova, nothing. This is my old friend. We studied together in the institute, and then he was expelled." Arthur could not believe his eyes. "So, is it true?" On the ring finger of Dasha's left hand, Two golden rings were drawn at once. One is classic, and the other is silenced, with a large yellow stone, similar to a diamond. The girl raised her hand so that Arthur would see them and understand everything. "But I told you," Artur whispered bitterly. "I can't figure out how you could choose this instead of me." The guy pointed at the major with such a look as if he had an hostile insect in front of him. "You won't understand, Arthur," Dasha said hoarse. "Vova, it's completely different." "Well, yes," the former groom agreed. "Vova, it's different. It's money and luxury. Clubs are expensive, which I couldn't take you, poor soldier, away from. And I probably never could, because I needed a family." "Not all of this." Arthur looked at Dasha with disgust. Suddenly, the husband himself got involved in the conversation. "I don't understand something. What are your claims to my wife? Who are you to her?" He seriously decided to find out the essence of what was happening, for which he even took off his sunglasses. "Who am I?" "Yes, I am her fiancé, Arthur." With a bitter smile, he said, "We wanted to get married. And then I don't know where he got it from. I was just upset to see our wedding." "Yes, Dash?" He cruelly addressed the missing bride and the guy. An awkward pause hung. Dash seemed to have frozen in place, hiding behind her husband's back. And he, without saying a word, was still looking at Arthur. Finally, Vovo apparently realized something and slowly moved to his heart's opponent. "Here's what the groom with contempt began. I don't care that you had Dasha there before me. Only now she's with me. Got it? We are wives, you." The major said in the words. "You were sitting in the barracks of your bathhouse for a while. You thought about what you could give her. A room in the communal apartment? A vacation at sea, covered once every 5 years? And you wanted this for Dasha? What I wanted, you don't know." Artur sprayed. He did not even notice how he took his body to the usual boxing stand, and the fists themselves swept the air. "Only you, and you like bastards, are always a good people, and life is spoiled. Is this you good with us?" Vovchik laughed miserably. "The beggar is not cut. Get out of here until the security is called. Aunt Glasha has already probably told the whole police about you. They will come now. They will pack you." Arthur did not remember what happened next. His body reacted earlier than he could take control of himself. Having attacked the fat wolf, he began to hit him without any consideration, one after the other, exactly as he did in the ring. Through the black veil of rage, Arthur heard the source of Dasha's cry and her prayers to stop the beating of her disgusting husband. How someone's strong hands are being sucked into him. These were the policemen, whom the suspicious Cut really managed to call. Arturo's skin was pierced by a powerful discharge of an electric shocker. The guy remembered only how his muscles began to shrink involuntarily, and then the complete darkness came. Arturo Rubin was sentenced to 3.5 years of imprisonment in the general regime cell. On the article on the cause of severe physical damage, with the possibility of extending the term to years in case the victim does not come out of coma. That's how easily Arthur managed to send Vovchikov to a full knockout. The flimsy health of the young rich man did not withstand the blows of the boxer, and the young man was between life and death. Dasha was not at court. Next to his wife. Did she ever love Arthur in principle? The guy could not give himself a definite answer to this question. The only thing he was sure of for sure was that he would never see Dasha again. Every night, lying on hard prison beds, Arthur was. So that Dasha would be ashamed, so that she would understand what her female happiness was for. But you can't turn away from what you've done. And that's why every next night spent in the cage seemed to the guy even longer than the previous one. 2.5 years later, he still went out on a plunge. By that time, Vova had already recovered a long time ago, and fortunately for Arthur, did not demand that the term be extended. The investigator later explained to Arthur that the father of Vovchik is a big bump, a deputy, and it was simply not profitable for him to raise all this pile of accusations again, especially since the re-election was at the nose of this deputy. When approaching the bus stop, Arthur thought about how he would now live and what to do. He did not want to go home. Surely, in his native Piñata, he has already become a sad celebrity. Bad fame, which reached a guy at such a young age, has severely spoiled both his professional and personal reputation. It is unlikely that someone in their small town will be glad to return from a sitting boxer. The father will also be not in delight with the living with his ex-son-in-law. In the last letter that Arthur sent to his only relative, he clearly made it clear that he did not want to share the same place with Arthur under the same roof, but even see it. Besides, Stas was already drunk. The neighbors, the friends of the late mother, wrote to Arthur that this bastard had not long left. Although someone from the usual environment did not turn away from Arthur. Getting on the bus, Arthur Rubin took a difficult decision, but it seemed to him the right one. The guy finally decided to break off his past and try to start a completely new life. Therefore, his path did not lie in the village, but in the capital itself. The city first met Arthur very politely. The guy could not find a job for a long time, and there was nothing surprising about it. As soon as the employer found out about the verdict, Arturo was immediately pointed at the door. Nevertheless, there were those who wanted not only to mock the former prisoner, but also to lie openly. This happened for the first time when Arturo managed to get into the city taxi park. At first, the guy was very happy. The money was promised to be good, and he was driving well. Therefore, the former boxer did not doubt that he would quickly master the wisdom of the counter. However, after several changes, he was completely disappointed. It turned out that the senior in the brigade had to give most of the revenue, and what was left was barely enough to buy bread and minerals. But we agreed that percent of the revenue goes to the driver, continued to insist on Arthur. Why then should I get only? It's just a robbery. You would have been more angry, you would have worked more, and that's what you would have earned. The senior brigadier quietly said, You think I don't know that you just got out of prison? You should be glad that you got a job at all, or you want to go back. You know, you were just a little bit of a coward. He threatened Arthur. As a result, the poor guy left the car park with a miserable salary and fell even lower with self-esteem. Of course, he understood that in such places they would not be able to celebrate with him. They would set up a trap, and that's it. And he never wanted to return to the Artur zone again. The second time, luck seemed to smile at the guy when he managed to get into a large supermarket as a stockholder. The first couple of months, everything was going well, until the store manager accidentally found out the fact that his best storekeeper had recently left. This time, Arthur was prepared to hide the case, and he could not even imagine how this information could suddenly emerge. But unfortunately, he was immediately fired, so the guy did not even have time to explain anything to the management. Arthur rented a small room on the outskirts of the city. The money earned in the store was just enough to bring in the owner of a nice old woman named Zinita Pavlovna another payment for a month. The guy lived very poorly, but managed to preserve his last dignity and not to be a bum. I'm afraid, Zinita Pavlovna, that this is my last month with you. With sadness, Arthur said, giving the elderly woman money. What are you, grandson? Why are you doing this? The old woman was sincerely surprised. She knew the story of Arthur and did not judge him. In the end, he had the right to stand before that rich man in his own honor. Zinita herself had lived alone for many years. Her only son died in a terrible accident when he was not even. Arthur somehow immediately liked the landlady of the old apartment, and after talking to him more, she even, what is called, has stuck to the guy with her soul. After learning that her residents were fired again, Zinita Pavlovna just waved her hand. Calm down, Arthur. Don't go anywhere, stay. Sooner or later you will find a good job. You will see, there will be good people who will not look at your past. And I'm not so scared of you. What kind of district we have, you see yourself not prosperous. And, tightly wrapped in a scarf, convinced the old man. Arthur heartily thanked the woman and promised her that as soon as she found a job, he would immediately give all the money for his forced job. Zinita Pavlovna only smiled, obeying the hot promise of the young man, because she sheltered him not for money at all. He reminded her of her son who left without notice. Returning one evening from another conversation, Arthur saw a dog lying in the parking lot without movement. When he came closer to her, he heard a poor animal howling. The dog's front paw was broken. Probably someone did not notice her and moved, leaving their parking lot. And even the poachers did not help. The dog was young, almost a puppy. In the mix of a taxi with a housekeeper, small black eyes were constantly looking around, showing white eyes, and the wispy velvet ears were wiggling exactly from the invisible wind. The dog was nervous, not knowing what to expect from a strange person who leaned over her injured leg. Arthur decided to take the dog to his house. At home, they, together with Zinaida Pavlovna. But the next day, she was taken to the vet. Fortunately, the bone was not damaged. The dog had a strong stretch and a pair of wounds on the body, but it was fixable with the help of appropriate care and rest. Zinaida Pavlovna was very happy to learn that everything would be fine with her new pet. She called the dog. It turned out to be a girl, a sortel. Her wool was amazing, red-brown, and the hard belly resembled the famous meat floor. So they began to live together. Arthur, Zinaida Pavlovna, and Sardelka. A couple of weeks later, Arthur managed to get 2 jobs at once, a loader and a night watchman at the cellulose processing plant. As his new acquaintance said, they needed a responsible worker first of all, just like Arthur was. One day, returning from the factory shift, Arthur witnessed a scary scene. Next to the nightclub, near the gorgeous sports car of neon pink, 3 large men tried to approach the young, but completely in the style of a drunk girl. Her short dress in gold sequins was dangerously torn, covering her tanned hips. One of the grommets somehow strangely puked, trying to grab the girl by the leg, while the other 2 were already exploring the contents of her bag on the item of the presence of keys to the car in it. Arthur stopped, realizing that the rich beauty, apparently, had become a victim of ordinary robbers who were watching over their unwise victims of nightclubs. But the intention of the third one, that he openly slapped the girl, Arthur did not like at all. "Hey you. Yes, you." The guy called them and nodded when they finally got distracted from their victim. "Maybe you should leave the girl alone? Don't you see that she is not in the mood to communicate with you?" The second, unsuccessfully trying to find the keys in the girl's handbag, risked his life, looking at Arthur. "Guy, would you leave? Can't you see that the grown-ups are busy with their business?" "Yeah, exactly," Gromil confirmed, pressing the drunk beauty to the wall. "This is my wife, and we have a moment of passion. Can you cut it?" All 3 laughed loudly, and the girl, obviously awakened by the loud sounds, sensed something in her. Arthur realized that he was taking a very big risk, but to leave the defenseless, and not in herself. He will never forgive himself for this. Not wanting to continue the meaningless conversation, Arthur quickly ran up to the most powerful of them. He was holding the girl and gave him his signature hook on the right. Gromila bent in half with Aston, but he never let his victim go. Immediately, the second robber flew up to Arthur and quickly treated the guy with a combined combo of several uppercuts and low kicks. Arthur, frankly speaking, did not expect that he would face an equal opponent in strength, so he walked a few. This was immediately used by the third, who had previously stood on the edge, and inflicted a strong and sharp blow to Arthur's head. A fierce fight began. Arthur fought back as best he could. He understood that if he gave up now, the girl would face an inevitable death, or something worse. An experienced boxer. He hit the criminals with all the blows that his favorite coach taught him. "Lower, lower, bend down. Yes, well done. Faster, faster, they will not wait. Come on, turn off the lights on the ribs." Finally, the police and ambulance arrived at the place of the fight. The 3 bastards were immediately tied to the armed riot police, and Arthur was taken to the trauma center. He was a former fighter, but he received several serious injuries, including a couple of broken ribs and a concussion. Nevertheless, the guy was happy. He managed to save a rich stranger, which means that he will have one more good day in his life. The savior of the rich girl was never given. Due to the lack of money from Arthur, he had to be satisfied with the first-ever help with a bandage and a long list of necessary medicines. The guy was discharged from the hospital the next day. The chief physician, with a smiling smile, personally asked him to vacate the place. "Arthur Konstantinovich, you understand that we cannot keep you here for more than a couple of days." Arthur nodded. And what else could he do? "Can I at least call a taxi to get home?" The head doctor agreed. She felt sorry for the guy who saved the major. While she was walking away under the dripper from the huge doses of alcohol she drank, he, a simple worker, risked his life to save her life. The woman paid for Arthur's taxi herself and wished her a quick recovery. Having returned home and heard the angry tirade from Zinaida Pavlovna, which he did not have time to warn about that he had been admitted to the hospital. Arthur, for some time, was in his own room. He had to come to his senses and think over everything that had happened. A couple of days later, a large black business class car came to Zinaida Pavlovna's house. From there, a man in an expensive dark suit came out, and, making a sign to his guard so that he would wait for him at the entrance, he went up to the apartment of an elderly woman. Zinaida Pavlovna was just feeding the sardine when they rang the doorbell. In front of her was Yuri Petrovich Sunshin, one of the most influential businessmen in the capital, whose daughter, as it turned out, was saved by Arthur. Having asked for permission to meet the young man, Yuri Petrovich carefully walked into his room. Zinaida Pavlovna brought tea to the guest, and then quietly left. It was time to take the sardine for a morning walk. Thanks to the surprise guy for saving his impetuous daughter, Sinchin decided to move to the main goal of his visit. Tell me, Arthur Rubin, is it true that not so long ago you were released from a place not so far away and already managed to celebrate in several points of our city? I mean the supermarket's car park and warehouse. Well, yes, I recently went out. To be honest, that's what he said. How did you find out about this? It's true that I tried to work as a taxi driver, but I didn't steal anything there and didn't cheat anyone. Sinchin almost smiled in his thick mustache. Well, about the first one, I have good connections with the police, so I know a lot about it. And about the second one, well done for not lying. I need honest people now. Tell me, asked the businessman. Why are you sitting? Arthur told him his unspoken story, after which the businessman kept silent for some time, but then said, Thank you. What you did is not so bad, in fact. To be honest, I would have done the same in your place. The only mistake you made was that you were too professional. You should have hit softer, and then the ox would not have sat at all. What to talk about the past? Arthur reasoned and called out. How would I know where to put the straw? This is true. The businessman agreed and hurried to close this topic, seeing how unpleasant it was for Arthur. Then, having talked a little about life, Sinchin unexpectedly turned to a guy with a very unusual request. In the first seconds, Arthur even thought that the businessman was joking. That's what, Arthur. I see that you're a good guy. Neither a thief, nor a killer, nor a rapist, and a great fighter. This is all that you actually need. Listen, Arthur. The businessman confidently turned to him. Help me to co-own with my daughter. Huh? My unmanageable Ksayashka is not listening to me at all. Oh my God, how can I help you here? Arthur was amazed. She stopped listening to me at all. The bitch. Sinchin continued. I told her words. I told her to drop her clubs, take it, I said, and she told me I have one life, Dad, I need to try everything in it. Well, I tried it. Tfuts. The businessman spat in his heart. I heard that even Ksyusha started to play with forbidden substances. Judge for yourself. I just haven't had enough of this yet. I need a guard for her. And yet, a reliable person to be, to be nobody. I just didn't introduce anyone to her. You can't even imagine. No one can get along with her. So I thought, maybe you can do it. You understand, I don't trust these new-fashioned security guards and security guards from honest agencies. They will collect any kind of compromise by the wayside so that they will have to pay for it later. And you, like a man from the people, will be simple, but at the same time with a purpose. I don't offend on money. I give an honest word to a businessman. You need to think. And Arthur answered this speech. You won't answer right away. Besides, I need to be treated. Come closer and think. According to Kim Nal Sunshin, I'll leave my business card with my phone. You call me as soon as you think of something. Before leaving, the man once again turned to the guy. You understand, I can't keep an eye on it myself. I have a business all day long. Stress, deals, contracts. And you threw the daughter of joy. I heard you, Yuri Petrovich. I'll think about your offer, I promise. The businessman bowed, said goodbye again, and left. Arthur thought it all over well, and finally decided for himself that it was worth trying. After a couple of weeks, as soon as he felt much better, Arthur called the number indicated on the Ksyushyn's business card and agreed to become a guard for his daughter. Thank you, Daddy. I made friends, and made Ksenia hysterical when she found out that her father had appointed a new guard to her. Arthur, I told you that this guy will now be your shadow. Where you are, he is there, and that without talking I am here." The businessman, who was angry with his daughter, shouted in response, "If you forgot, dear daughter, Arthur Davix saved your life and honor. When you, drunk from the club, fell to such an extent that you did not even realize what was happening around you. And I didn't ask for it. And I was very angry with Ksenia. I could have walked further past, otherwise I would have to. What a night I found. To say that Ksenia and Arthur knew each other did not work from the very beginning meant nothing to say. The young major, and she was barely, managed to bring her new guard to such an extent in a day that he just wanted to leave everything behind and go back to work as a night watchman or loader. Sometimes the girl deliberately teased the guy all day, forcing him to walk with her through endless shopping malls and beauty salons. He saw with his own eyes how she lowered the unpaid amount on some dresses and shoes, buying them in huge quantities. And Artur could only dream of such money. However, the guard endured, and gradually, but his patience was still rewarded. Ksenia got used to the guy, became softer with him, especially after he pulled her out of several difficult front lines. So, one day Ksenia overcame with some substances, and she had a real overdose. Arthur was terribly scared then. He managed to find a private clinic nearby, where the girl was pumped. After that, she promised him that she would end up with drugs if he didn't tell her father anything. To the surprise of the girl, Arthur kept his promise. Ksenia was really touched by such loyalty, and she also tried to reduce the use of stimulators as much as possible. Of course, secretly from his father, to completely get rid of his addiction. The second time, Arthur managed to stop the annoying fan of the Golden Youth, who had been pursuing Ksenia for several months. Arthur talked to the guy in a manly way and politely explained to the local elites that it was better to leave the girl alone. As in the previous case, Arthur did not tell Ksenia's father about this. He wasn't very chatty at all, and the girls really liked that. The young people themselves did not understand at what point they had captured feelings for each other with their heads. Ksenia unexpectedly realized that her attachment to the silent guard was much deeper and more sensitive than it should be. And Arthur just realized that he does not represent his life without a cheeky but so defenseless Ksenia. For a long time, Ksenia and Artur had to hide their feelings from Yuri Petrovich. The girl was afraid that his reaction might be unpredictable. "You see, he is very strict with me," she said to Artur. "He brought me up alone and got used to controlling everything. Mom died of leukemia when I was very little, so I grew up so fast. I decided that if I were bold, and I wouldn't let anyone put a word in, I would only stand on my own. Then the disease would never dare to take me away from my father, just like my mother. All my life, I have this fear that I can get sick too. Nobody will take you from me and Yuri Petrovich," Arthur promised her, gently hugging her. "Just leave all your bad habits, and everything will immediately become different. You will see. And your father will calm down. He will know that you no longer need to constantly hold on to the cap. Believe me, one wrong decision can turn a person's life upside down. And if you make such decisions every day, it doesn't matter what you do in the minefield. You never know when and where it will explode." And Arthur told Ksenia the whole story of his life and mistakes that cost the guy almost 3 years of normal life. After that, Ksenia was as if replaced. Every day, the girl learned to control herself better and better, gradually humiliating the inner demons and thus deserving respect and praise from her father and her beloved. But none of this was the reason for Ksenia's sudden change. Yuri Petrovich began to pay attention to the fact that for the last couple of months the daughter, somehow, feels unwell. That she drank all the alcohol, as if she drank all night, although it didn't smell like alcohol there. At first, the father was afraid that Ksenia had leukemia, which he had taken for a short time to her mother's health. But then another, much more prosaic guest visited him. "What does pregnancy mean?" Sinchin was laughing, calling Ksenia and Arthur to his bedside. "How? When did you even get there? You're a good goose, too." And the businessman returned to the guard. "I was so old, fool. I was happy. I thought finally the daughter in good hands got caught. I was thinking, and then on you. Dad, I'm pregnant with Arthur." The businessman teased his own daughter. Then, slightly calmed down, I asked the young people, "When do you plan to get married?" Don't think that I'm going to let it all go like this. Huh? Oh, Xusha, you're a cunning one. Arthur and KSI were relieved and exhaled. They both knew that Sun Chin, even though he was a strict person, was even harsh. But his heart was always big and kind. And of course, for his daughter, he wished only good. Since she chose such a guy as Arthur for herself, it means that's how it is. Moreover, he managed to set the girl on the right path. According to the story of Arthur, Xusha understood very well how valuable the life we have here and now is and how dangerous it is to balance on the edge. A month later, young people got married. It was one of the most vivid and memorable capital weddings with a huge cake and a lot of invited guests. Of course, there was Zinata Pavlovna with a Sordelka, where in a few months they brought their common son, the newborn Dima. Yuri Petrovich was completely delighted with his grandson. He is deeply in love with him and is already planning to give him to the International School of Economics. Thanks to the protection of the dough, Arthur was able to open his own security agency in the capital, where he receives people only after a personal interview. Most of all, the former prisoner boxer wants his employees to remain, first of all, good and reliable people who can be trusted unconditionally. What about Ksenia? She has forever left all her bad habits and is now engaged in raising her son, and also builds around them with Arthur a house of her own and, of course, a unique landscape design. If you like the story, please support me with the thumbs up button. And to find out about the release of new interesting stories, press the bell when subscribing. All the best to you.